Thank you for such a lovely introduction. What a great group of people. This is very exciting to see everybody so energized in the morning. I'm used to late night people, so it's nice to see this. I think I'm going to turn over a new leaf. Also just wanted to say that I just got back from a big conference in Chicago. As you know, I run an independent theater, the Rio Theater, and I'm very excited thank you. And I'm very excited to have returned from this conference. It was an annual conference that happened, but this is the first time we were able to gather since the pandemic. And it's a convergence of all the independent theaters. They say around the world, but it's mostly American. That's like, I think there's like 4 of us Canadians there. But it's very exciting. It's the only chance, as you can imagine, there's not very many independent theaters left, in all the cities, and especially here in Vancouver. So in order for me to get a chance to speak to my peers, I have to go to this convergence. And it's too bad that it's only once a year, but it was very exciting. And so before I get into a bit more of my story with the Rio, I thought about the theme of trust, and I just wanted to tell a little story that I just think is kind of gives you an idea of my character. Of like, people often ask me like, how is it that you just don't give up, and how is it that you do these things that seem impossible or hard to do? And so this is just an example of where that comes from. So back when I was in my early 20s, I kind of had a bad habit of running on empty in my car. I probably did it physically as well, but it was mostly with my car. And I ran out of gas like a lot, like way too many times. It was embarrassing, right? Like too many times. Part of it I would say was, I was obviously broke, when you're young. I was an art student. But it was also because I think I had to think about, why did I do that so much? Part of it was I just didn't want to slow down. I just didn't, want to take the time to refuel. But also part of it was, I think it was a bit of an, hedging my bets kind of crazy optimist, where it was like, oh yeah, it says empty, but I bet I can make it, So I just always kind of had that attitude. And there was one time in particular that it is just the most insane time that I ran out of gas. I'm driving home. I was working as a cocktail waitress, probably wearing something similar to this, where I'm like, got my little skirt and I got my little pumps. And it's like 2 a.m. and I'm driving home. I'm staying out in Burnaby. It's like 1993. I'm in my early 20s. I'm driving my mom's little red Toyota, and the car starts to sputter. And you're like, oh no, oh no. I'm still halfway to get home. And it sputters again, and then dead. My car is out of gas. And at this point, I'm like, cursing myself. And then, there's nobody around. The streets are empty. And then when you run out of gas as many times as I have, you know the drill. You put your car in neutral, push the car over to the side. You're going to go to the nearest gas station. I already knew where it was. I'll go walk there, your walk of shame to go get the gas. And but it's a little scary. It's dark. It's 2 a.m. And so I put it in neutral, and I go to push the car, and it's not moving. And I realize I'm on a slight incline, so it's not going to move. And so I'm trying to push. It's not working. So I'm like, okay, I'll just try. I'll go to the back of the car, and I'll try to push it. So I go to the back, and I'm like, behind it, trying to give it a good push. And I've got my little pumps on. So I kick those off, get barefoot, figure I'll get a little bit more grip, try to push the car, still not moving. And I'm like, man, and nobody is in sight. So then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to put it in park, maybe put the hazards on, leave it there, right? I go to get back in the front, the door has swung shut, and my keys are inside. And so not only did we not have cell phones back then, so no cell phone, we also didn't have automatic car open, there's no clicker, right? So my car, the keys are locked in there. And in the split second that I've noticed my car is locked, I also notice my car rolls when I don't hold it. So it's starting to roll backwards. So then I have to run back, position myself back, to hold the car to stop it from rolling. And then oh God. So then I'm looking around and I'm thinking, okay, well, I need something to wedge the tires. I'm looking around, nothing, no rock, there's pebbles. That's not gonna do it, right? There's no big rocks, there's nothing. So, and then just as I'm looking for something big enough, and even if there was something maybe further away, I'd have to time it, like how far can I run to get the thing before the car rolls? And then I realize I'm actually only a few feet away from a steep ravine. And that's the direction my car will roll if I let it go. And it's my mom's car. And I'm like, oh my God. How could this happen that I could I'm gonna lose my mom's car in a ravine? Like, what? So this is just not good, right? So I'm standing there holding the car, trying to just think what the hell? I keep hoping somebody's gonna come by, nobody does. And then and it's cold, it's 2 a.m. and I don't even have a coat, my coat's in the car. And then it starts to rain. Yeah, this really happened. I am not embellishing this story. It started to rain and I just couldn't believe it. It was just one more thing piled on top of the other. And it literally made me just start laughing. I think I was laughing, crying. I think I started cursing, yelling. And there was nobody around, so I could say whatever I want, swear my head off. And as I'm standing there, freezing in the rain, holding my car, keeping it from rolling into a ravine, it suddenly, and that's it. I was waiting, is somebody gonna come by? You're praying, but no, nobody is coming to save me. So in that moment, suddenly an idea popped into my head. My mom's car is a hatchback. And then I realized the hatch is not locked. So then I get my idea, and I'm like, okay, I think I know what to do. But there's no rehearsing this, right? This better be a good plan. So it's either a really brilliant plan that's gonna work, or it's gonna be a disaster, and I'm going to jump in that hatch, and I'm gonna be down the ravine with the car, which is not good. So I had to think it through, summon the courage, and I pop open the hatch. When the moment comes, I pop open the hatch, I dive in head first, my legs are dangling out, the back, and as I do this, the minute I leap, the car is rolling backwards, and it's picking up speed. And I managed to get self to the front and diving with my hands first, both hands onto the brake, and I managed to stop it. And I remember that moment of literally feet out the back, hands on the brake, shaking with adrenaline, being so yeah, I did it, And, after that, I put it in park, I get out and I see I was inches away from going off the edge. But I was just so pumped. I was just fuck yeah, I did it, right? And so that's kind of, and then I don't even remember, I ended up having to walk and go get gas and do all that. I don't even remember that. I was just so pumped. So that's kind of how I am, right? You can literally put me in the most impossible situation and I will not give up and I will just keep thinking there's gotta be a way out of this, right? There's gotta be a solution. And my thrill is trusting it and taking that leap. And I have, running an independent theater, you need a lot of that. So which brings me, make sure I've got the right direction here, which brings me back to the Rio Theater. And when we first started the Rio Theater, it was back in 2008. I'd run restaurants before, and I kind of thought, oh, how hard could it be to run an independent theater, right? Just play some movies, right? But sure enough, once you get into the business, you realize there's all kinds of restrictions. People don't even know how difficult it is to deal with studios, and they do things if you play first run films, you have to play. If you're a single screen theater, you have to play that movie, like say it's Disney, you have to play that movie and only that movie for 3 weeks straight. They will not let you play another thing. And that's how the midnight movies came about, because that restriction ends at midnight. So that's how midnight movies have come about in a lot of independent theaters, because it's the only time you can play anything else. So I know when we first started, we would do these insane double bills that would start at midnight and go to like 4 a.m. just so that we could play, different content. Soon, once we got going, we realized pretty quick that, business is better with booze. People like to drink when they socialize, as they do. They like to do that at weddings. They like to do that at all sorts of cultural events, right? So we decided, okay, let's get that liquor license. So we applied for the liquor license. As soon as it took about 14 months, takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and we were struggling along business-wise. As soon as we got the liquor license, they said, right, we're going to give you this liquor license, but now you're not allowed to play movies. I was like, what do you mean? Well, you can either be a concert hall with a liquor license, or you can be a movie theater without a liquor license. And well, why? Well, there's this law from 1920 that says movie theaters are not allowed to serve alcohol. So I literally, in that moment, I had to decide. And again, trust, right? All of these decisions are, okay, I'm just going to trust this. I said, right, okay, I'll take that liquor license, sign away, and I'm going to fight it. And I knew in my head that we have to fight it. We've got a projector, this is ridiculous, we can't not play movies. But they did actually make me sign a document, and I'm the only person, I think, in Canada, as well as British Columbia, that has ever had to sign such a document that said, I will not play movies of any kind at any time, sign here. And this was like a legal document from the liquor board that said no movies of any kind at any time, and they made it specific for me. I wonder why. No midnight screenings. So we signed this, and many of you may already know that after we decided to fight, the community rallied together, and we managed to change the liquor laws in the province of British Columbia so that all movie theaters can serve alcohol. And that is not something I ever thought I would be able to do. I never thought liquor laws were an easy thing to change, but it was just necessity. It was like either the Rio was going to close or we had to change this law. So that, again, that's just how my brain works. Like, well, we just have to do it then. And we couldn't have done it without the community support, absolutely, because nobody in the government would have cared if just a few little voices are making some noise. So it was definitely the extension of the community. So once we managed to do that, then business is going great. We've got our liquor license, we're busy, we're doing well. And then we find out that the building is for sale. And the developers want to buy it and they want to tear it down. Which was devastating, absolutely devastating. But thankfully, my landlord did say if I was able to match the offer of the developers, then they would allow me, preference. I could buy the theater, which that sounds pretty exciting. Only problem is you got to raise $8 million to do it, right? So that's very much like just an absolutely impossible situation. We had no money like that. And again, for those of you that know this story, we, decided, so I made the offer, and again, this is trust, where I have no money in my pockets. I sign an offer to buy the theater for $8 million. Let's do it, right? And the fact that I have to give Leonard Shine, who was my landlord at the time, I have to give him credit that he even took my offer seriously. Because he was actually my landlord and he knew I didn't have very much money. So I sign away and then we start the campaign. And, there was so much love and support from the community that I did feel very inspired. But yeah, it doesn't matter how much people love the place. It's an impossible task. And one thing I really remember that is an important moment in it, I remember people asking me, like, well, how do you even think you can do this? Like, what if you don't do it? What if you fail? They would ask you those types of things. And I remember thinking almost kind of like incredulous that they would even ask me that. I'm like, do you ask an Olympic athlete what's going to happen if they don't get gold? Like, no, that's all you're thinking is we're going to do this. I'm not deluded, neither is the Olympic athlete. They know, okay, there's a possibility they might not get gold, but they're not talking about it. They're not thinking about it. Their only room is to achieve the goal, and that was my attitude. Long story short, after 4 months of so many different ups and downs in the campaign, we had some celebrity endorsements, we had all kinds of amazing things happen. We managed to raise $8 million and we bought the property. And this actually makes the Rio one of the very few community-owned venues in the world. There's not-for-profits that own places, but not the way we've done it. We've created it in a hybrid situation where we've got the community involved. And so yeah, that is something I feel very proud of, and it actually got us through the pandemic. I didn't even know that, but by owning the property, it got us through the pandemic. And if we'd had some unsympathetic landlord or impatient landlord, we might not have made it through. And one of the things that Mark had asked me, what are your favorite memories? And it took me all day, I couldn't even think of anything. And then I realized this is pretty much my favorite memory. This. Yeah. So Ryan, for whatever reason, he's a wonderful man, but he also, I didn't know he was paying attention to the Rio, but somewhere along the way during the campaign, Ryan took notice. Kevin Smith was also a huge supporter, but he took notice and he went to Twitter and showed support for the Rio. So he was following all along. So when we posted that we had accomplished it, and then for him to say that, those words really mean a lot to me. The fact that we never gave up is why other people never gave up, And I've often said that to people, even just in business or promoters. I think of it like you're putting on a party, a house party or something. And if you tell everyone, yeah, it's gonna be a great party, not really sure if I'm gonna go, but you should, that's not getting people to do, that's not gonna motivate anybody, right? So you have to be 100%, you're not giving up, you're going to be there. And then other people feel like they're excited and they're going to show up and they're going to join you. And again, that's trust. They trust you to show up, and then you can trust that they will. And then I'm kind of glossing over this stuff quickly because I don't really know how much time I have in my mind. But the next big thing that happened to us, we call these the battles. And the next big battle was the pandemic, of course. So after you buy the property and Ryan is singing your praise, what could go wrong, right? Everything seems great. And then when the pandemic hit, we all know what happened. It was horrible, it was terrible, and it was devastating for theaters around the world. Everyone had to be closed. We were the first ones to close, we were the last ones to open, and gathering became this fearful, experience. And so there was a point, I followed the rules and I did all the things I was supposed to. And then there was a point nearing, I think it was early 2021. So it was, after the hard crunch of the pandemic, that I got very frustrated. And that's because I saw sports bars full with people playing, watching hockey. And they were these small bars. There was no care about COVID. There was no care about air conditioning. They were crammed, jam-packed, and I wasn't allowed to be open. Theaters had to be closed, but sports bars were allowed to be open. And at that time, during the pandemic, we often used our marquee as our way to get messages out to people. So we would, post things, just letting people know what's going on with us. And that morning I woke up after seeing all these sports bars packed and we're not even allowed to be open. And I just told the staff this. We actually had a meeting about what to put up there on this. how far should we go? We decided screw the arts was the best way. Because that's how we felt. We felt that, that's what we were being told, that the arts were getting screwed, and as long as you were playing sports, that you'd be protected from COVID and you would be okay. So I thought maybe that would work for us. If we played some sports, we might also be protected from COVID. And the crazy thing is, when I did this, it was kind of a fuck you, and just pure frustration. But they took me seriously. They were like, officials showed up we said, we're doing it on that day. They showed up and we're like, right, you're a sports bar now. Well, you have to be, they checked on all these things. You have to be serving people in their seats. You have to be, and even things that didn't even make COVID sense, I'm like, but we have a protective screen. No, you have to go up and serve them in their seats with a tray like a sports bar. Okay, we'll do that. They also told me, because when theaters were allowed to be open, we were all limited to only 50 seats. And my venue has 420 seats, so 50 seats is nothing, right? And they also said, because sports bars were allowed to have 50% of their capacity. So they said, and also now that you're a sports bar, you can triple your capacity. I was allowed to have 210 seats instead of just the 50. So this sports bar business was good. So yeah. So it was crazy. And honestly, when I look back, now I think of it was kind of like we were in drag, because we just put on sports outfits. Like, we didn't even know what to wear. We didn't know what to play. I was phoning friends, what sports do we play? And they're like, well, they tell us the teams and they tell us the sports that people like to watch. So this is the kind of promotion that we did, And we actually got somebody, most people got the joke, but we actually did get somebody who was like, I am so shocked that the Rio would turn their back on the arts. And they're very mad at us. And then because, of course, we still had to get a little twist in there. We were also thinking about the sports and programming. Like, we have programming meetings, right? And none of us had a clue of what to play. Then we thought, well, how about this? Because it's like Drag Race, that's a sport, right? So, and I just couldn't wait for an official to try to argue with me that Drag Race is not a sport. I was ready. Have you seen those death drops? So yeah, but nobody tried to argue with me, so I was disappointed. They just let us do it. But what was really amazing was how the public came out. Some people actually were interested in sports and they came out and had a good time and watched it. But other people just came out just to visit and have a beer and support the Rio. And we also created these T-shirts, which, people generously bought T-shirts. We did a whole campaign about, take a selfie and with your sports bar T-shirt and share it. So that we could raise money. And so these were some ways that we activated our public to help support the theater while we were closed. And then, here's some examples of, nothing fancy. We just had caution tape on every third road. We measured out the distance. And then there's our sports bar server there, who happens to be my daughter there. And he looks really happy. Yeah, none of the staff were thrilled with this whole thing, but we did our best and we had fun with it. And then, I think I know what's coming next. And then another fun thing that happened during this time was because we'd been communicating with our marquee, there was one other venue in the city, I don't know if anybody knows this, that also communicated with their marquee frequently, got quite well known internationally for it, the Penthouse. And they were constantly putting up funny things, about the political things, about the pandemic and all that stuff. And after we made the sports bar move, I think that's the next photo, they said this. And so I've never met these guys in person, but we were actually, it was like smoke signals. We were messaging each other with our marquees, and they would say something, then we would put something up, and then they would put something up. And so we were having a lot of fun with it. So, I guess what it all boils down to for me is that, this kind of trust that you need to have. I mean, we all need to have trust just to get up in the morning and live our life and, show up every day for whether it's showing up for our family, our friends, our work. But there's, sometimes you have these crazy ideas and, the only way to find out if it's going to work is if you try it and you just, you take that leap and trust that it's going to work out. And I think, to be honest, I think the thing that gave me the most confidence the entire time with all of these antics and battles with the Rio is the first time when we asked the public for help to change the liquor laws, and the way everybody showed up just gave me, I felt like it just gave me this buoyancy, and I knew I wasn't alone, and I knew that community power is huge. And then it taught me that it's like, as long as you're using that power for good, that is something that, it's almost undefeatable, really. And we see it with so many other big movements, Greta, how do I say her last name? Thank you. And Greta, I'm just going to say Greta. But there's been so many movements throughout our, humanity where when people come together, they really are unstoppable. And so that gives me all the confidence in the world. And because I know the Rio is not mine, it's the community's, and it's there for everyone. People cried when they came back from the pandemic, and they'd been separated for so long. I had full-on PTSD. I was losing my mind. But I had, there was a few of us holding it together in the office, and one of the girls, actually I'll say her name, April O'Peel, she's a great burlesque dancer, promoter, producer. She's a sociable girl and exhibitionist to boot. And she would sometimes just be sobbing at work because she was missing her community so much. And I know that there's some of you introverts out there that were having the best time of your life. Okay, I get it. But the rest of us, were not. And it just really taught me how important it is to gather, how important it is to have these spaces. A lot of people aren't as religious as they used to be, or at least they're not going to regular churches. A lot of people tell me the Rio is like their church. And this happens in communities all over the world, that, art spaces are starting to become, their religious place, whether it be you're listening to music or sort of the hypnotic communion of being in a darkened space and sharing a film together. Those types of things are part of our human need, And so that's why I just feel like that's my cause in life, is to keep not only the Rio, but now that I'm going to these conferences and meeting independent theaters all over, I really want to do what I can to help save independent theaters everywhere. So that's a bit about me.
Okay. Let's have a conversation with Corinne.
Okay, here I am.
Hi, I'm David.
Hi, David.
And I just want to say, because of you, I watch Drag Race now.
Yay! Another convert.
But one of the things also I don't think you mentioned is that you also are such a big supporter of community arts groups, because you allow live performance earlier in the evening and then movies and stuff afterwards, which is, I think, is also, there's not a lot of places for people to put on shows like the Critical Hit Show and Story Lie and stuff like that. And thank God the Rio's there. So thank you.
Thank you.
We actually, you generously partnered with us and hosted the Thais 20th anniversary event kickoff and the debate series.
It was fantastic.
Which was great.
I loved that event.
Thank you for sharing and connecting with community. I'm a creator of Grandparents Film Festival. So I wanted to ask you, how do you select your films? And do you have any program to show movies with elderly and grandparents? And yeah, and who is the audience?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we actually have weekly program meetings, and it's a big group of us because usually, especially when it's programming films, you're either programming like the latest new thing that's coming out, and because we're an independent theater, we're really tuned into more of the independent films or the repertory films, as opposed to the latest superhero movie that Cineplex is going to be playing. So we have our eye on that part of the film industry, but then we're also looking back and playing, classics and films from the past. I like what you asked about the audience because that changes everything, right? When we're thinking about the audience, for our late night, a lot of times we're playing horror movies or, something really funny, stoner movies, or it's people who want to stay up late, right? Not always the stoners, they're already asleep, right? But for sure, we also like to play documentaries, and so really, I would be more of a question to you about are you saying specifically grandparents? Were you saying yes? Oh wow! Yay! And so maybe would you guys? My question would be: would you maybe want it? What do you want to see? But I'm wondering, would you want to see something with your grandkids? Is that a thing? Yeah. Yeah. Well, one fun event that we did recently, and we've repeated it a few times, is Saturday morning cartoons with all-you-can-eat cereal. That they take it very seriously. I have a pickup truck, and I literally have to fill my entire pickup truck with sugary cereal. It's the idea is it's all the cereal that your parents wouldn't let you eat. So it's like, Chicks Are for Kids and Cocoa Puffs and all that stuff. And I can't even tell you how stressed out I was by this one kid who just would stand there the whole time shoveling cereal and his eyes glued to the screen, and he wasn't leaving. I was like, okay, it's enough, But yeah, no, absolutely. I think I love that you've brought that up because, so yeah, maybe I could get in contact with you and we could find out what sort of films your community would like to see.
Hi, Corinne. Thank you so much for your great talk. My name's Marit, and somebody in the group, when we were discussing, got everyone to share a memory of the Rio. What was like, and my recent thing was this winter, because there was no ski season, and it was very devastating. But so I was at the Mountain Film Festival, and I remember thinking, what a great community. And I admire your tenacity. Is there something that has recently happened for you that didn't work out that allowed you to go on a new direction, and what happened?
Oh, I mean, we have the thing when you run a venue, you can never rest on like one successful event. Like the minute you hit it out of the park, you're like, woo, John Waters sold out, woo. And then you feel like you put your feet up and that's it, never, right? So anytime we have a success, that one success, we're worrying about 10 other events that are struggling. So I feel like it's constant. It's like a conveyor belt of events, right? And some things, yes, some things you thought was a great idea and just nobody came out. Sometimes even we'll follow a suggestion in our suggestion box. Tons of people requested it and nobody comes out. So it's, I think that's one of the phrases I like to say about what my job is I call myself a pop culture seismologist. So I think of it like we're always measuring the tremors of like what is happening out there in the world and trying to, be in sync with it. And so, yeah, sometimes things just don't work out and you give it your best effort. And so what was your, I think what was your question specifically? You were saying when something doesn't work out? When it doesn't work out? Yeah. What do you do? How do you? Yeah, I mean, I think you just learn. Learn from what doesn't work out. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes you did everything right, and it just, timing, there was another big event that same day, and, or the weather, or who knows, right? So, yeah, so I think maybe the answer to that is to just keep trying, just when something doesn't work out, and don't take it so personally. Like, don't be like, oh, that means everyone hates this then. No, it just means that particular timing or whatever, you figure out the nuances of why it didn't work and then try again. So
I suspect your nervous system is on kind of 11, dialed to 11 a lot of the time.
yeah.
Which means just biologically, you need ways to get grounded and calm down and get centered. How do you do that? Where do you find your calm again?
Yeah, no, that's very important. I really needed to do that when I came back from Chicago, actually. And it is, I kind of have to, I remember my mom was a very interesting woman. And I remember sometimes, like, I had like kind of no rules. But she was like I was like the last kid of 4, and I was kind of like allowed to just do whatever I want. As long as you came home, before dark. But I remember sometimes she would just say, like, so when other kids had these very strict rules of, no, you can't go to this, you can't go to that, I was allowed to go to all the things, and I would just go home if I was bored or something. And then, but I remember every now and then she'd say, no, I think you should stay home tonight, like just arbitrarily. And I would, what? I'd be all incensed. And she'd be like, no, I just feel like it would probably be good for you, And so she just kind of taught me that sort of, and then I think I started to learn that self-regulation of like, oh, yeah, maybe I need to. So it's checking in with yourself, knowing when to have time alone. But, I also, a big one for me is, this is just a physical activity I do all the time, is the stairs near the Anthropology Museum. Those stairs ground me like nothing else. If I ever wake up anxious, which I do, I struggle with anxiety sometimes, and if I wake up like not grounded, super anxious, I don't care how I feel, I'm like, you're doing the stairs. And it's 410 stairs up and down. I'll do it if I'm feeling good, three or four times. And just the ocean and the breathing and that nails it for me.
Hey, Amar. Firstly, thank you so much for being here today. I just coincidentally happened to be wearing a Mountain Film Festival shirt, which
Yay, we
I'm
love those
volunteering at the Rio. So thank you for opening up to communities and festivals like that. But and I have to give a shout out to your Oscar night too. That's always a fun time.
Yeah.
My question is, in terms of like when you're thinking about business models, I know during the pandemic, another thing that was happening was studios pushing on streaming. Mm-hmm. So like when you think about changing consumer like behaviors as well as like how people are consuming content, how do you think about in terms of how Rio fits in like a streaming type era, so to speak?
Yeah, I feel that the place for the Rio is all about the in-house live gathering. I'm absolute, like, I love what you guys are doing here about adding the streaming element. But I feel like, I know for myself during the pandemic, I really got tired of those, Zoom parties or whatever. And it's like, we're really all about the in-person, face-to-face. But I think I'm a bit of an analog person where I kind of like, I'm a bit old school. I like things to be just kind of simple. And, people are often talking to me about like, there's that idea of going bigger, better, and, more technology and this and that. And yes, obviously we need, to be tech friendly to run a multimedia venue. But I also, for us, the heart is just the in-person connections.
One more. Okay.
Hello, I'm Vanessa, and my question to you is, I'm pretty sure you find this relatable, but sometimes trusting the process feels out of my comfort zone. what has been the biggest takeaway for you personally? Or if I have to rephrase the question, what was something that you found about yourself in that kind of like trusting the process chapter of your life that surprised you, or that you are like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did this, or this is who I am?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the cycle that you go through whenever you're doing something new, and because it's scary, and we all have that self-doubt, and you have all the reasons against you, and it never changes, right? It doesn't matter how confident you get. Performers go through that every time they're coming out on stage. So every time you're about to make a leap, it's that, it's overcoming that self-doubt and doing it anyways. And yeah, I think that is the takeaway for me, is that it's never easy, and that you're always going to have to have that trust in yourself and take the leap anyways. So, but yeah, thank you for asking that question. One thing I didn't mention, if I can just add, just as my parting, I could only talk about so many things, but we're also in the process of making a documentary film about the Rio. And now that I saw all these opportunities, I could have put some things up about it, but another time we'll talk about it. But I'm very excited about it because we're going to be telling the story of the Rio, of the various battles, but also it's about, the independent theaters worldwide are in a crisis, especially in Canada. And one of the reasons why the Canadian theaters in particular are in a crisis is because the Canadian government has allowed Cineplex to have a monopoly in our industry. They have over 75% of the market, which is not allowed in any other country, not in the UK, not in the States. And independent theaters all across this country, if you're wondering why you can't see like a brand new film at your local indie, it's because we're told you have to wait until Cineplex is done with it. And that, we have tried to complain to the Competition Bureau, got nowhere. That is obviously not a legal, fair process. And I always kind of laugh whenever Cineplex gets asked this question, like, is there a monopoly and are you blocking indie theaters? What do you have to say? They just say, oh, the distributors decide where the movies go. And we all know, we know directly from the distributors when they tell us that they will get punished by Cineplex if they don't follow Cineplex's, do Cineplex's bidding. And we've even said, oh, can you put that in writing in an email? And they're like, absolutely not. So if you want to know more about it, there is a podcast that I did on Canada. It's called Canada Land, about monopolies. And there's a whole bunch of experts on there talking about it. They even got an anonymous distributor to talk specifically about the ways that they are punished from Cineplex. And that's the first time I realized I was being, after being gaslit for so long, that, oh, you're making this up, to have a distributor actually admit all the various ways that they're being manipulated. So that is what our movie is about. We're trying to, I either have to sue Cineplex, or I have to get the government to change the laws, or I make a movie about it. So, third option.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vancouver's feisty, scrappy, tenacious community activist and creative superstar.
Thanks for
Corinne Lea.
having me.